Dr. C. Rangarajan, former Reserve Bank of India governor, a doyen of the Indian financial sector, joining us. Dr. Rangarajan, this is shocking news. Governor Patel resigns and cites personal reasons. Can they be personal at all, sir?
I'm indeed very surprised to hear this. I thought that the last board meeting resolved most of the issues. Therefore, I do not know what fresh issues have risen after that. But I am certainly surprised and deeply shocked in some ways.
Okay. Would this in some way affect the image of the Reserve Bank? I mean, the last we remember is the hoary past when India was not all that globalized or even marketized. Benegal Ramarao resigning, and I think H.P.R. Iyengar also resigning, right? But those were times when we were not all that globalized. Now we are a big, deep market and a globalized economy. Will this mean international investors will worry?
Well, I think there was another case. Mr. Malhotra also resigned.
Oh, yes, Malhotra, sorry.
So, anyway, I think the resignation by the governor has its implications. I do hope the government comes out with some clarificatory statement so that we understand why and what happened. But all that I can say at this point is that I am deeply surprised.
Okay, sir, actually the letter says that on account of personal reasons, I have decided to step down from my current position effective immediately. Now, when Viral Acharya made that speech, which appears to have started off a string of reactions, he clearly said that he thanks the governor for suggesting this topic. So it looks like it was a jointly written speech. Would you say under the circumstances that the deputy governor also may leave, in which case the vacuum in the top will be really serious?
Well, we do not know the circumstances and so on. So let's wait. Because there can be no vacancy as far as the governorship is concerned. Therefore, if the resignation is accepted, then there has to be immediately another appointment.
Okay, so normally the deputy governor would take over, isn't it? And the deputy governor in charge of monetary policy.
No, the appointment has to be made by the government.
Okay.
So in the last case, when Malhotra resigned, the new governor came.
Oh.
So therefore, they have to make up their minds. I just don't know anything.
Yeah.
I am not privy to anything. So, right.
Raghuram Rajan joins us. Dr. Rajan, appreciate you joining us here. Sir, you've been fairly vociferous in your criticism in the manner in which matters between the government and the Reserve Bank have been handled. And now we've got Urjit Patel tendering in his resignation. The Prime Minister and the Finance Minister tweeting saying they appreciate his work and wishing him luck. But what does this mean for the Reserve Bank of India? What does it mean for India and the economy?
I'm sort of on this call. I don't know how I'm connected directly to an online live program. Anyway, let me be very brief. I do think this is a serious issue. It needs to be dealt with carefully. The government has to ask what led to this resignation. Resignations are not frequent at the RBI. This is probably only the second resignation in its history, maybe the first explicit resignation. And therefore, we have to look at the circumstances that led to it. It's a statement of dissent, and therefore the government has to be very careful in dealing with it such that the autonomy of the institution as well as its credibility is preserved.
But Dr. Rajan, you say it's a statement of dissent, but the governor's own statement says nothing of the sort. It says, I'm resigning due to personal reasons. If you believe that this is in fact a statement of dissent, would it not have been then accurate for the outgoing governor to have said so?
No, I think you have to, in all these cases, read between the lines. It may well be that health is involved. But I think we also have to look at the circumstances in which this decision is made and ask what prompted it. So I think it's useful to go over the kind of dialogue that's taken place over the last few weeks and ask if there's anything that could have prompted such a statement.
Dr. Rajan, will it be very difficult to, get credibility for the predecessor, for the successor, because it may be seen as the government has picked someone who is willing to toe the line?
No, I think you're prejudging a lot of events. We don't have a new appointment yet. We have to see what the government does, both on the current set of controversies between the Reserve Bank and the government, but also in terms of the process of appointing the new governor and who the new governor might be. It's a long way there. I think we shouldn't prejudge what might happen, but I think it's extremely important at this point for the government to take due note of what has happened, take it very seriously, and act appropriately to preserve the credibility of the institution.
So what do you think could have been the proximate reason? Is it that Section 7 was threatened to be used? The events that have led to this, to the resignation. Is it the political appointments to the board? Is it the empowering the board to such an extent that the Reserve Bank is being made to toe the line? What do you think, as a person who knows the institution, which comes as a shock to you? Which do you think was the wrong way to go?
I don't want to speculate. All I will say is that the act of resignation is really the ultimate weapon in a government appointee's sort of portfolio, and they exercise it. They don't exercise it lightly, and so to that extent, we must look at this decision and understand why Dr. Patel, who was appointed by this government, essentially exercised that particular option. Now, as you said earlier, it may well be because of health reasons, but something coming at this juncture, given that Dr. Patel was hale and hearty at the monetary policy conference a few days ago, would suggest there is more to it than just the statement. And I think the government is well advised to look at the details and understand why it happened and act appropriately.
Okay. Can the RBI be managed for some time with the deputy governors, or do you think it is extremely important to find a replacement very quickly?
No, I think there have been circumstances in the past where interim sort of people have held the position, and I don't think that it's something that needs to be done tomorrow. I think the government has to be deliberate about this because it involves the credibility of India's one of India's most important institutions. So treading carefully is extremely important.
Dr. Rajan, I don't expect you to speculate on what could have been the precipitating factors behind the resignation, but I will ask you this, sir, because this has all, been documented publicly. Of the issues where there was variance between the government and the Reserve Bank of India, to your mind, what would be the most serious of those issues? Would it be the issue of the use of capital reserves of the Reserve Bank of India? Is it this business of relaxation given to banks that find themselves under the prompt corrective action, a line of credit to NBFCs? Of the issues where there has been variance, what would concern you the most?
Let me not speculate. I don't really know, and I should not suggest when I don't know. I should also ring off. I have to catch a plane. I got onto this call somewhat by mistake. I should get off at this point when I think I've basically said what I could.
Dr. Rajan, if you can stay on for a minute. Dr. Rajan, you're there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, no, I mean, I'm not asking you to speculate, Dr. Rajan, but which looks like the most serious issue to you as a person who knows the institution well? Is it Section 7 that looks serious to you? Is it appointments to the board that look serious to you? As someone who wishes well for the institution, which according to you threatens it most?
I don't know what was directly on the mind of Dr. Patel, as well as Dr. Viral Acharya, who spoke earlier about some of the issues between the government and the RBI. I think, again, it would be well advised to look at the circumstances that have led up to this resignation, and there's been a fair amount of back and forth, and see to what was it that Dr. Patel felt most strongly about. And I think the institution has a long record of cooperating where necessary, but also standing firm where it is not in the interests of the nation to acquiesce. And so to that extent, we must ask, what was it that prompted Dr. Patel to believe that he could no longer continue? So I would think that's worth looking
But can
at.
there be a charge that this time around the institution did not cooperate? That could well be the government's stance, that unlike previous regimes, this one did not.
I don't want to go into the details because I'm not familiar with them. I just think that this is an important issue that needs to be examined.
Per se, do you think that the investment community will be extremely disturbed by this?
Again, that's something for the investment community to decide. How to speculate, we'll know tomorrow morning when the markets open.
Oh, yes, of course. But the global markets are already in an eerie spot. Nevertheless, Dr. Rajan, do you think the next best thing the government should do is to get another governor immediately? What should be on the government's priority list now?
I've said that it can take its time. The main issue is to go carefully and deliberately over what has happened and figure out how to ensure the credibility of the institution going forward. So I think those are all matters that the government can and should and will hopefully pay attention to.
Mr. Chidambaram, many thanks for joining us here. It's not an entirely unexpected development, but certainly a surprising development given this timing, sir. Urjit Patel tendering in his resignation. Your comments?
Well, I'm not surprised at all. According to me, he should have resigned on November 19, which I said was a day of reckoning. I think they partially humiliated him on that day. He may have thought that the government will retrace its steps. I knew it would not. And why go through another humiliating meeting next week? So I think his resignation is good for him. According to me, no self-respecting scholar or academic can work in this government.
But where does that leave the institution, sir? You're saying it may be good for him because you believe that no self-respecting individual should be in this position. But where does that then leave the institution? Where does it leave the economy?
It leaves it in tatters. When government forced the RBI to concur in demonetization, the reputation of RBI was substantially ruined. It hasn't gained it anywhere in the world. In Basel, they look upon the RBI as some kind of a government-controlled central bank. I think we'll have to wait for another government, the next government, whoever it may be, to rebuild RBI, as the next government has to rebuild many other institutions which have been either captured or destroyed.
But speaking of the uncertainty now on account of this resignation, which is effective immediately, Mr. Chidambaram, what is the process? The senior-most deputy governor takes over in the interim till the government appoints a replacement for Urjit Patel?
Well, government can appoint a quack as RBI governor. I'm told that Dr. Viral Acharya is also perhaps contemplating resignation.
Well, that the Reserve Bank spokesperson has clarified to us that Viral Acharya has not tendered in his resignation. That's the clarification that's come in to us from the Reserve Bank of India, sir.
Well, I don't know. Anyway.
What would your concern... Yeah, just one quick question, sir. What do you believe is going to be the matter of most concern at this point in time, given the fact that there are several pending issues that were to be taken up at the next board meeting, one related to the issue of governance?
We can't discuss.
Yeah, do you believe that those issues...
all that now.
But do you believe that those issues are now likely to be pushed?
This is not the time to discuss those issues. What can they push when there is no RBI governor?
We've got Mr. Yashwant Sinha joining us, the former finance minister. Mr. Sinha, this was being speculated and now it is official. Urjit Patel has tendered in his resignation. He says on account of personal reasons. Your first comment, sir.
My first comment is one of shock, because in the meanwhile, after the last board meeting of the RBI, it was being pointed out that everything was hunky-dory, that all the issues had been resolved. So quite clearly, the resignation of Urjit Patel shows that nothing had changed and that things were quite as bad as they were before. And his resignation is a clear sign of the government trying to interfere with the working of the RBI. They're trying to destroy the autonomous character of the bank, that is its due. And I personally feel that after the resignation of Urjit Patel, there is no reason for the finance minister to continue in his post. He should also tender his resignation.
Oh, Mr. Sinha, that would be very difficult.
Well, so far,
very difficult for the country, don't you think so?
And so far, Mr. Sinha, there has been no reaction from North Bloc just yet. But Mr. Sinha, how is this going to go down with, for instance, the IMF? And I ask you specifically about the IMF, sir, because the IMF had actually commented on the spat between the government and the Reserve Bank of India, and had also cautioned that the autonomy of the Reserve Bank of India was something to be protected. From an international perspective, from organizations like the World Bank, the IMF, foreign investors, how do you believe this will be read?
Not only by the IMF, but as you said, the foreign investors will read it very badly. They will be more convinced than ever before that everything is not all right with our system, that it is not merely the issue of one individual, it is the collapse of a system. And this is not going to augur well for the investors who would be thinking of coming to India and making investments here.